All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. We had a few attendees have some challenges joining us this morning. So I think for the most part, everyone's here. Sorry, my microphone keeps muting. So I'm Jeremy Roth. I'm the Director of Professional Services for Jonas Club Management. I joined Jonas in 2013. I've given you two new fun facts about me because many of you have attended my webinar just a couple of days ago. So traveled to well over 40 countries around the world and visited just over 500 clubs in my tenure with Jonas. So definitely a lot of on-site visits with a wide variety of clubs over the past few years. So during today's webinar, you might have noticed that your line has been muted, and that's just to reduce any background noise so everyone can hear as clearly and as well as they can. You do have access to a Q&A box or an ask a question box in this meeting interface. So if you do have questions as I'm presenting, feel free to enter them there. If I have time and if I catch it while I'm presenting, I'll try to address the questions as we go. If not, I've left a good amount of time towards the end of today's presentation to answer any of those questions. Or of course, you could also ask me any questions or our support team any questions after today's webinar by emailing us. I will make a copy of this session available for download. And we will post the video recording for today's session within our YouTube site. The link is available here for you, but just log on to youtube.com or youtube.co.uk and search for Jonas Club Management, and it'll be the first video in there because it'll be the most recent one. And we'll get that up on the website at latest by tomorrow. So quick running order or agenda for today's webinar. We'll talk a little bit about why we're here. I like to hope that we all know why we're here today, but just a quick run through of that. What some of the configuration considerations are that you can make within your Jonas system. Some processing considerations, discounting considerations, as well as reporting options that are available to clubs that have registered for the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. What you'll notice in the presentation or in the user interface for today's presentation as well is that there is a handout section, and within the handout section, I have provided the download for you of the document that we sent out earlier last week as well, so you have access to that to follow along. The format for today's webinar very much so follows that format as well. So we're all obviously here because of wonderful COVID-19. More specifically though, obviously the Eat Out to Help Out scheme that HMRC and the UK government has made available to dining establishments in the United Kingdom. So in Jonas specifically, we've done our best to digest and understand what the HMRC's requirements are. I've shared below the link that we've used extensively for researching and understanding what the requirements are for our clubs and for restaurants that are offering this scheme. So what we've done is we've enhanced a discounting feature within Jonas to help primarily your end users, so your service staff. And what our goal was here is that obviously this development time scale for us was relatively short. And also the duration of this discounting scheme isn't long, so it's only being offered for a few weeks or for most of the month of August. So we weren't able to enhance every bit or consider every bit of the requirement, but what we did is we tried to keep the end user in mind, tried to make it as easy as possible for your service staff to provide or calculate the discount at point of sale, and knowing full well that the administration staff might be a little bit more in tune or adept to having to maybe manually do some or conduct some calculations before reconciling and providing those numbers to HMRC. So based on our understanding, so first I'll share with you what we've interpreted as the requirements for this discounting scheme. Um, we've determined that this scheme discount is a gross of VAT discount. The scheme discount is applicable only after all other discounts and incentives have been applied to a chit. VAT is calculated on the full item price. The scheme is applicable from the 3rd of August to the 31st of August and only on applicable Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays for which the club is open. The scheme is only applicable to food and non-alcoholic beverages and which are consumed on premise. So off-premise, private party, event, or function food and drink are excluded. And this is also exclusive of any service charges. Lastly, the club is responsible for keeping records for the total number of people who've used the scheme in your establishment and the total value of transactions under the scheme. So of course, we're encouraging you to review the document that I provided as well as this presentation in detail before you make any changes to your Jonas system. The majority of these changes that we're highlighting today are things that can be done in advance of next week. And we do encourage you to configure your Jonas system and do some testing to determine if this specifically will work for your club. The reason we say that is because we have a large variety of clubs on the phone and within the UK that have a large variety of different discounting and processing considerations, and those vary from clubs to club. In a perfect world, we'd have time to look at all of that and consider each club's requirements one by one. But because of our tight timelines, we've really done the best we can with the best intentions to provide something to clubs, but we know full well that there might be some considerations that are very club specific that we may have missed. And as I mentioned before, our intent here or our focus on this was to reduce the burden on your service staff or your front end users from from having to figure out any discount rules or have to consider anything, and really make it as easy and seamless for them to serve your members and your guests without having to consider any of the inner workings or inner rules of how to apply this discount. So an audience poll here, and maybe an obvious one, but just to get a gauge, out of the clubs on the phone today, how many of you have registered so far for the Eat Out to Help Out scheme? And I'll give you a couple moments. This question has popped up on your screen there, so you could just answer simply yes or no. Obviously, I was hoping that the majority of clubs joining today would be joining because they have registered, and that in fact does look like it's correct. 100% of you have registered from those that have responded to our poll. So that's great. It looks like a good majority of our clubs within the UK have registered to attend this webinar, and have also answered yes to that question. So it seems like for the most parts, clubs are taking advantage of HMRC's Eat Out to Help Out discount scheme. So some configuration considerations. So to start with, the very first one, you do have to conduct a version upgrade in order to take advantage of this custom development that we've done. We've released this customized development or the specialized development for our UK clubs in our most recent release of Jonas that came out last Tuesday. So that is the most recent version of Jonas. And that is version 2020 of Jonas that you do have to be on. So you do have to upgrade to our most recent or advanced release of Jonas in order to take advantage of this. The majority of you on the phone are probably quite familiar with our version upgrade process, or your IT folks are. If not, I have provided links within this presentation on how to conduct a version upgrade or a product update within your Jonas system. If you need any help outside of that documentation, feel free to contact our support team. Then within Jonas, there are some very specific configurations that have to be done in order to take advantage of these discount calculations that Jonas can do for you. The first one is on the sales category level. So within your point of sales categories, you do have to turn on what we call our unrelated business flag or UBI category flag for any categories that this discounting scheme does not qualify for. So a good example of this would be any alcoholic beverage categories. You're going to want to flag those as an other unrelated business category. And that needs to be done either category by category, or there is the option to do those en masse as well. So I'm just dragging over to Jonas here, and there is a screenshot of this within the presentation, as well as in the documentation that I've provided for you folks as well. In system administration under point of sale, there is something called change sales category settings. Great feature for a wide variety of reasons because you can en masse change different settings. So if you wanted to come in here and change kitchen printers, or if you wanted to change VAT codes or anything like that, you can come in here and do it. And the way this works is there is a setting in here for UBI. So I can turn on the flag for UBI, say I want to change that setting to other. And then when I hit proceed here, it loads up a list of my sales categories for me. And I can come in here and pick the categories that I want to apply that new configuration to. So in this case, the categories that you'd obviously be looking for here is anything alcoholic beverage, anything that might allude to takeaway if your system is set up in that way, anything banquet related, I'd also probably turn that setting on for. Anything non-revenue based, so any gift cards, gift certificates, Levy, anything like that, I'd want to turn that on for. And then there is the function here to preview and then update your work. So this is just a nice shortcut, especially for clubs that have quite a few different categories that you'll have to be turning this on for. The alternative is that that setting does live within the sales category, and you are free to come into each individual sales category under other modules and turn that on, and then use the next setting to move on to the next one and so forth. My other suggestion here is that you can run an F9 report. Great for checking your work just to make sure that you've turned all the categories on that you intend to turn on. And conversely, you haven't misconfigured anything. So within the F9 report generator, I can design my own report here. I'm just going to pull the category code, the category description, and then in the other module section, pull that UBI category over. And then I always like to save these reports. Right, so give it a good description that makes sense in case I want to reference it again. And I'd always recommend saving these reports because should anything come up, any issues, it's always nice to go back and rerun the report and check and make sure that that everything's being configured correctly by just kind of checking your steps backwards and making sure that everything is being done. And that just highlights for me specifically which categories I've configured for that unrelated business category. And just a sample there of that report as well. And just my tip in there for you as well. The next thing you have to do is you do have to set up a new reason code. So reason codes are an existing setup that the majority of clubs on the phone probably use. And it's our way of tracking the reason why something was done in your point of sale system. So the reason why something was voided after it was sent to the kitchen printers, the reason why a chit was voided by a manager, and in this case, the reason why the eat out discount was being employed. So this is obviously something we want to track, but there is also some programming that we've done to help identify a discounted chit for the scheme versus a non-discounted chit for the scheme. So you do have to set up a new reason code. The code for that discount code must be COVID, COVID. description, I suggest using Eat Out to Help Out discount within that description field. It'll help you folks with reporting, as well as it will display that way on some member-facing components of Jonas as well. So you just want that to be as obvious as possible to anyone reporting or anyone seeing that discount. And then as I note here, the rest of the flags or options underneath the description, you just leave blank or as is. So within my reason table here, I've set up the COVID reason code, and what I'm implying here is that these three options underneath, you just want to leave those the way they are. There's no need for you to fill out any of these three options. Just leave them as is. The next thing you do have to do here is configure a discount comp option in Jonas in order to actually allow your service staff to apply this discount to chits. So in terms of the type of discount this is, we consider this a discount comp in Jonas. The reason we've done it this way is because it is a discount that's taken after VAT has been calculated and after service charge has been calculated. And I know I mentioned earlier that this discount does not take into account or is exclusive of any service charges. So Jonas does do that calculation on the back end to exclude the service charge. So nothing to be concerned with there. But we have chosen the discount comp button to actually make this work. So all of you have the option to set up a discount comp. I'll show you that in just a couple of moments. The description of that discount should be something to the effect of Eat Out to Help Out, something to that effect to make it obvious for your service staff which button they should be selecting. You do have to allocate this to a specific nominal or GL account. So if you're not from the finance team at the club, do consult with your finance team before configuring this button. The percentage discount should be configured here at 50%. This function does require a reason code, and that reason code would be that reason code that we just walked through how to configure within your system as well. So this discount comp button should be configured on any one of your settlement screens that you might have across the various outlets that would be using this Eat Out to Help Out discount scheme. So just keep that in mind because you might have more than one settlement screen that you'll have to update. And the discount type or function that you're looking for is the SM5 discount comp. The best way to find it is here in your function box down below. You can just search for discount, and it's the first one that comes out, the discount comp option there. And just to my point, description could really be anything you want it to be. Obviously something that's quite easy for your service staff to understand. Nominal account, again, that's club specific. The discount amount has to be 50%. It must require a reason code, and that reason code should be that COVID reason code that was configured. And obviously, I'm a big fan of using colors, so I'd use a nice bright color to highlight what that option is on the menu screen because it'll be a new option there for your service staff. Just a tip here, as I mentioned, you might have more than one settlement screen within your Jonas system. And a good way to find out what those might be, in case you're not fully aware, is in point of sale system setup and system parameters. You obviously have a list of all your areas. Now, I only have seven areas here, so I could in fact just go and click on each one of these and take a look at them. But if you have quite a number, you can do an F9 report here, design your own report again, and then use area number, area description, and then the settlement menu option to go ahead and highlight for yourselves what the different settlement menus are that you have. And the only reason I bring this up is because some clubs, it's quite obvious what those settlement menus are. They're all coded nice and neatly. In some clubs, that might not be the case. So it's just a good way to double check and make sure that you've covered off all the different settlement or tender screens that would potentially need this discount button associated with it. A couple more considerations here, or configuration options that do need to be turned on. So there is a flag within point of sale system setup, system parameters, and end of shift reporting called the store today's voids, edits, and discounts and history file. The majority of you, if you haven't checked this already, this was probably turned on most likely to begin with. If it isn't, it should be turned on, and as a best practice, it should be turned on going forward as well. So you just want to go ahead and just navigate to that menu option and make sure that setting is on for yourselves. And then a very important configuration consideration is to just make sure that you log completely out of Jonas, all the way out of the login screen and then back in again, both on the workstation that you've made these changes on, and in order for the point of sale machines to pick up this change, you just want to make sure that they've logged out and logged back in again as well. And then the last note here is that you really want to make sure that you do this for all relevant companies that you might have set up in Jonas, any relevant partitions, because some of you might have more than one partition that this is applicable for. So you just want to repeat these steps for any one of those companies or partitions that you might have in Jonas. The last consideration that you have to make is that in order for Jonas to know the number of people to calculate this discount for, because the discount is 50% off up to £10 per the number of diners that are on any given chit or table, is Jonas needs to know the number of people or number of diners. And the way we've done that is with an existing feature that you all have in your Jonas system, which is the capacity or the option to enter covers. Now, some of you and some of your teams might be very used to entering covers in Jonas, so this could all be kind of glazed over, and for some of you, this might be a relatively new concept. And there are two ways that you can enforce the entry of covers within your Jonas system. One is that Jonas can prompt you for the number of covers at the start of the chit, which is something that I'd highly recommend is being considered, especially for this period of time. And the other one is that servers can go ahead and enter their covers at any time while the chit is open as well. So one is very much an active process in that servers have to action something, in that they have to go in and enter the number of covers at some point before the chit is closed. The other one is a little bit more passive on their part, in that Jonas is constantly prompting them at the start of the chit for the number of covers, and then if they need to change those number of covers, they can do so at any time while the chit is open. So the automatic prompt is something that can be configured, and there's a couple of different places within Jonas that you can configure this and then override it either by sales area or by individual workstation. So to start with, and again, this is all highlighted on the slides as well as within the document that you were provided with, but I'll go ahead and highlight the different areas for you that this can be done within Jonas as well. So within point of sale system, system setup, and system parameters, under options here, very first main screen here, you do have the question of, does this partition ask for the number of covers per chit or not? So this flag should typically be turned on. Then this can be overridden by sales area. So within the sales area setup, you can tell the system for specific areas to not use the number of covers at all. So for something like your banquet areas or non-food and beverage areas, you would typically say, do not ask for the number of covers for each chit. There is also a flag here to allow or disallow for the entry of 0 covers as well. And then lastly, so we've looked at system-wide or in your system parameters, which applies to all areas. We've looked at an override that you can employ area by area. And then lastly, terminal by terminal or workstation by workstation, you also have the ability here within the miscellaneous option to ask for number of covers or not. So each individual workstation can have that parameter set up as well. So a couple of different places to look. The user actioned area, so if you don't want automatic prompts for servers to be prompted for number of covers, and the way that looks is when I come into my point of sale system here, and I select a table here, it'll ask me for the number of covers. Now it defaults to the number of covers based on my table layout. So I've told the system in my table layout that this table is typically a two-top or two-cover table. So it's automatically infilling that for me, but I can change that to 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever I'd like to change it to. And then the user action part of this is that at any point in time, I can change the number of covers or set up the number of covers. So covers of 4 here, I can click on that and change the number of covers to 8 or to 2 or to whatever else. So a couple of discounting considerations in terms of what Jonas is calculating here on the back end. Can everyone hear me all right? I had a couple of comments that you can't hear me. Audio keeps dropping. Let me, okay. Hopefully that's a bit better. A couple of discounting considerations here. So we know which categories of items qualify and do not for the discount scheme based on that flag for the UBI that's being turned on. So we know if the item is an alcoholic beverage or not. So we know which items to exclude when we're calculating the discount. Based on the cover count entered by the user, we'll consider this to be the number of diners as defined by HMRC. Based on this, Nicholas asked the question, we use a number of covers when people are coming in, even if it's just for a drink. Is there any way we can still do this? The answer is yes. So number of covers for a beverage would still be tracked. Obviously, the alcoholic beverage wouldn't be calculated in terms of the discount because there would be nothing that would qualify for the discount scheme on that. So even though you would say there were 2 diners and those 2 diners had a beverage, if the server tried to apply the 50% discount up to £10, Jonas would actually calculate nothing for that, just because there was no discount to give them based on the rules that we've set in for this. So to that point, the discount comp button with a COVID reason code is pre-programmed to enforce a 50% discount per cover up to £10. The discount is calculated as a gross of VAT discount. The discount is applied after all other automatic discounts and incentives are applied. And there is a note here. So the only situation where Jonas cannot consider what the discount is the Levy discount. And the reason why, and many of you that use Levy discount are quite familiar with this, the discount for Levy is not calculated until the Levy settlement is selected. So this is a bit of a catch-22 for us because you wouldn't apply the levy charge until you've applied the Eat Out to Help Out discount, but Jonas doesn't calculate the levy discount until the levy settlement is selected. So for those of you that do apply a levy discount, you may want to consider in this period of time turning off levy discounts and calculating those manually. I know that's a pretty serious consideration to make, but unfortunately, because of the nature of this discount and because of the nature of how levy discounts are applied, it would be a bit challenging for us to do both, and there was no logical way for us to consider something that isn't applied until it's paid for. VAT is calculated on the item price. And that is after any other discounts are taken. So if you are taking any item discounts or limited discounts, obviously, the amount of VAT calculated would be less. And service charges are excluded on this. So again, as part of the special programming for this, Jonas knows to exclude the service charge from being calculated as part of the discount. So a couple things that this discount programming does not do. So I think it's important that we also highlight that. The discount comp button is not pre-programmed to only be applied for certain days of the week. So the discount button doesn't know that it's Friday and this discount should not be applied. It just knows to apply the discount whenever that option is selected. The COVID discount comp button is not pre-programmed to differentiate what an on-premise versus off-premise order is. It also does not know the difference between a la carte dining and private parties, events, or function food and drink. So those considerations were not made. So the assumption is that the user that's selecting the discount button is able to make the decision that this discount is being applied only on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and that this discount is being given to something that is considered an on-premise and non-function related chit. And the last one, as I've mentioned already, is that if the club offers a levy discount, the discount is not applied until the levy settlement is selected specifically for the levy discount. So you might want to consider turning off and manually applying the levy discount as an item discount instead for this interim period. And just to that point, if there are any clubs on the phone that offer a percentage discount on levy, would you mind just typing into the questions and answer box for me and identifying yourselves? I think we've got an idea of what those clubs are, but could you let us know if you think this might impact you? And my last note here is especially important. We strongly encourage clubs to go ahead and set up this functionality in advance of the 3rd of August. Test it, see if it works for you. Again, we had a very limited window of time. We had about a week to turn this around to get it into the product for last week. So we've tried to test, we've tried to consider as many of the different options as we could, but you know, we've full well understood as well that our clubs use our system in a wide variety of ways, so it's always best to test this kind of stuff out. From a reporting perspective, we've enhanced a report to help with this. So there is a report in Jonas called the reason code report, and this is one of many of the reasons why the reason code that we're telling you to set up has to be programmed in a very specific way. One of the ways is that, you know, in terms of reporting, we can help the club with their reporting requirement back to HMRC. But also there is some special additional programming in there. But specifically for reporting, the reason code report's been enhanced for you. So when you report out on a given range, so in this case, it'd be for the month of August, and you select that COVID reason code, at the bottom of the screen, you do have to also select the sort by option, which is number 4 by date, and also to include item detail. We've developed a couple of nice features in here where we've reported out for you on what the discount base is for each one of the chits, i.e. what Jonas calculated the discount on. For the discount scheme, and also at the bottom of this report, we've just given you a high-level summary, which is what we've understood as being required by HMRC, what the total number of COVID chits were, so chits that were subject to the discount scheme, the number of covers or number of diners that were given the discount, what the total number of sales in pounds was, and then what the total number of discount that was given in pounds as well. So just a very basic but you know, option to give you the reporting that you might need to substantiate this back to HMRC, as well as our club report generator always gives you the option to write your own custom reports as well, specifically for point of sale chits as well. So what I've done here is just given you a list of the codes that you would need to write a very detailed report in your club report generator to report out on this as well. I think based on what I've understood, you really won't need much more than what that reason code report would give you. But if you would like something a little bit more in depth and detail, I've just called out for you a report that might give you that information as well. So I've created a report here in my system called COVID Chits, and I've literally just entered in all those different column headings that would apply. And those are exactly the same as what I've highlighted for you here on the slide deck and in the document that you've been sent. Conditions, I've left conditions blank. I want all chits to report out for me on here. So you just want to leave your conditions blank at the top. Bottom half of the screen, you do have the option here to include cash chits as well, so non-member chits. You definitely want to turn that on. And the other two flags here, I was just playing around with this the other day, you want to leave all those other flags off. And then when you select print here, the only question Jonas is going to ask you is for what date range to report out on those chits. Obviously, if we were doing this actually for the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, that would be the month of August. I only have chits in July though, so I'll select July as the range here. And as a best practice, considering the number of columns, I'm just going to take this report directly to Excel. And I'll just drag that report over to you. So this report basically gives me all of the item detail or all of the chit detail for each chit that was run through in my point of sale system. And you'll see here, because of the function of the discount comp actually being a type of payment in Jonas, it's its own distinct line. So I would see the detail for any one of my chits in terms of the amount of Eat Out to Help Out discount that was given and the amount that was also settled to whatever payment types as well. So you will see multiple lines here for a given chit. So in this example here, this chit for Miss Branch for £33.66 is actually 3 lines of data, the amount of discount that was given, then the amount of cash that was paid, and in this case, the amount of member charge that was paid as well. So you will see multiple lines in here for any given chit. But this does comprehensively give you all of the chit by chit detail. The reason I'm pointing out the multiple lines here is that just keep in mind, if you're trying to sort this report, you do have multiple lines of detail for the same chit. So just something to be mindful of as you're sorting in Excel. One thing you can do in here as well is under conditions, one of the options here is to populate all columns and show all detail with the same information. And I'll just show you what that looks like and contrast the difference for you between the two iterations of the same report here. When I say populate all rows, what that does for me is it populates all rows with the same information. So if I wanted to see the total amount of the chit, it would populate it for all 3 rows of that, which some clubs find especially helpful when sorting this information, as opposed to not populating all rows, really just populates the total of the chit on the first line for me, but the subsequent lines just contain the data that's different for those rows. So I'm just kind of pointing out that difference for you there. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. So there are a couple of clubs that have identified that levy discount does apply to you. So you know what we've done as some consideration here is levy discount is something that you can turn on or off. Again, we've spent a lot of time discussing that specifically, just because we tried our best to consider if there was an option or was something that we could do from a programming perspective to consider that discount. But unfortunately, as I've mentioned, the discount doesn't calculate until you've actually selected a levy settlement. And if you select the levy settlement before you apply the discount scheme, then obviously the amount of discount would be different. So it poses some challenges, most definitely. And aside from private member clubs, Levy is a bit of an abstract concept for most other restaurant type environments. Um, so you know what we've considered is that some clubs might have to turn off the discounts in here or set the discounts in here to zero. And then we do have item discount options that are available to apply the item discount manually. In effect, what this basically is just an automated discount. So it again is a way to make the process easier for your staff. But in lieu of this, we do have other discounts, such as a limited discount, which would apply to specific categories of items only, which is basically what the Levy discount is. And I'll kind of just highlight that for you. So within your sales categories, you do have the option to set up what we call a limited discount for each category. So you tell the system yes or no, this category applies for a discount. And then depending on how complex your Levy rules are, there is the option on your settlement screen to add a limited discount, and that discount would apply whatever percentage is defined in here to whatever items or categories have been flagged as being applicable to that limited discount. So that's one way that we've considered that. I know it's not necessarily ideal to have your staff have to calculate that discount or action that discount this way, as opposed to with the Levy discount the way it is right now. But unfortunately, with the considerations that have to be made for the discount scheme, we didn't really see any other option. So that was a bit of a digression there for the few clubs that have mentioned that they do a Levy discount. I'm open for questions now. Feel free to use the questions and answer box if you'd like to. I'll also go ahead and unmute the lines in case anyone would like to ask a question in person as well. And just hang tight with me here for a second. I don't know if we have that option available to us here, but if we do, I'll try to make that available for everyone. So I have unmuted everyone's lines, so you do have the option now to unmute yourself if you'd like, or use the chat box, whatever's best. I do have a question here in the chat box. Would you apply the eat out scheme first and then the limited discount after, or vice versa? I can only go, Helen, based off of what I've read on HMRC's website, which is what I'd suggest that you folks do as well. Our understanding is that the discount does not apply or applies to the after discount amount. So you'd have to apply the Levy discount first, or calculate and apply it first. I don't see any other questions. Like I mentioned, a copy of the presentation will be emailed out to you most likely later today or early tomorrow morning. The recording for this presentation will be posted to our YouTube site. The handout's been sent out already. It's also being shared within this, this presentation for you this afternoon as well. Our support team is up to speed and is aware of these updates as well. So some of the most familiar faces to all of you folks, such as Raj and Maxine and Nancy, are all aware of this development and have been brought up to speed with this, as well as our support team as a whole. So if you do have any specific questions, let them know. And they can help with any of the configurations or any of the questions that might come up. And otherwise, I hope everyone has a good rest of your afternoon. And it was a pleasure speaking with you all today.